Hi, I'm Deborah Gray,
And I'm Lawrence, her son.
and today we're going to talk about finding and seeing a psychiatrist if you're a kid or a teen with anxiety or depression. So, three things first of all. One is we know that if you're profoundly depressed, it's hard to take charge of the situation. But if your parents are unable or unwilling to do so, then you're going to have to. The second thing is that seeing a psychiatrist for either depression or anxiety does not mean that you're necessarily going to be put on medication. And the other thing is that's really important is when you're asked the question about whether you have suicidal thoughts, please answer honestly. If you say yes, it does not mean that you're going to be put into a hospital. Okay?
Personally, I've had suicidal thoughts for a pretty long time, and I've admitted it to my parents, my therapist, my psychiatrist, and I haven't been locked up in an institution yet. No padded walls for me, no straitjackets either.
Not even close. So, what does a psychiatrist do? Well, a psychiatrist is someone who evaluates people for mental illnesses and then recommends treatment. In some cases, a psychiatrist is also a therapist, and in some cases they're not. It depends on the person. Now, a psychiatrist who only prescribes medicine and focuses on that is called a psychopharmacologist. That doesn't mean that psychiatrists who aren't called a psychopharmacologist don't know a lot about medication. I had a psychiatrist who was fascinated with medication, so he was very, very well versed in it. So that's what a psychiatrist does. A You also have therapists, though they do something different. So we're going to talk about that in a future video. So in theory, your best options in descending order for seeing someone for your depression or anxiety are a child or adolescent psychiatrist, then a regular psychiatrist who doesn't specialize in children and adolescents, and then the third option would be your family or your pediatrician, your family doctor, your general practitioner, whatever that is. However, based on our experience, the best person for Lawrence was not actually a psychiatrist.
It was a nurse practitioner, and she has been and still is pretty helpful. I just stopped therapy because me and my therapist agreed I was in a pretty good place with how I was doing, and I still see the nurse practitioner. She's cool. Shout out to her.
Liz, we love you.
And yeah, for the most part,
so
she's been pretty good.
Yeah,
Great.
the thing is that first of all, one thing was that the first so Lawrence saw three psychiatrists before that for his medications. First his ADHD meds, and then his antidepressants and his ADHD meds. And two of the doctors were elderly, and one was my psychiatrist. And one thing, I love him for me, but one thing I wasn't crazy about was that he didn't really seem, he asked Lawrence some questions, but he seemed to be looking at me and my husband more for our opinions than for Lawrence.
Yeah, that got kind of annoying because like every time I'd speak up, he'd just be like,
Yeah,
he'd kind of just give a blank stare, and then my dad would talk and be like, "All right," and then the first one, if I remember correctly, didn't really believe in ADHD. Thought I was.
Oh
Just
no,
a
you're thinking of the
stupid
second
kid.
one. The second one. The second one didn't believe in ADHD and was doing therapy for Lawrence, but would ask him not to take would tell us not to give him his ADHD meds before the therapy, but then would get pissed off at
Weird.
Lawrence for being hyper. So, but he really didn't believe in ADHD.
It was stupid.
He was not the best. However,
garbage.
Now, just to look at things differently, he was excellent for someone else we know. He was an excellent therapist for someone else we know. So it just goes to show that a lot of it, and this is very important, it's the chemistry between you and the doctor that is really, really important. Okay? So how you respond to a doctor may be totally different to how someone else responds to them.
Yeah, like me and my last therapist, the one I just stopped going to therapy with, he was really cool. Like I would go off on tangents like a lot. I do that normally, and I did it a lot when I was like doing sessions with him, and he'd let me. And if I got really far,
he'd reel you in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really harshly, but he'd like be like, "All right,
yeah, let's
calm down a bit."
Yeah.
And
which is good.
And he was cool because he actually, I didn't have to explain. There was stuff where I think one time I was talking about movies, and he actually knew what it meant, so I didn't have to.
He actually knew what a movie was?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. But you're not saying that the other therapist didn't.
Oh my god. No, they were not. No.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were, when we're talking, they both.
He actually knew what memes were.
Yeah, both of the other therapists we're talking about were in their mid to late 70s, so there was a big difference. The first one he saw for the ADHD meds, after the initial assessment, basically would come in, have take Lawrence's weight to see if he needed to adjust the meds, but it was kind of hard to get him to increase the meds, even when we told him that Lawrence was having trouble focusing at school. So that was a case in which he didn't really listen to us or Lawrence. So, and he didn't ask questions. So
I don't know why I'm fidgeting with this.
Because you haven't taken your meds.
They aren't supposed to know that, Mom.
Yeah, well, anyway. So that's it. That's really, really important. And, honestly, chemistry with if your parents don't like someone and you don't like someone, and that's pretty much it. If you like someone but your parents don't like someone, you need to talk to your parents about, well, what don't you like about them? Because I'm really comfortable with them. So that's why I was saying also that the chemistry is really important. Okay, so also we wanted to talk about what do you do if you do have insurance and if you don't have insurance. So if you do have insurance, what you do is you have your parents get a list of the in-network psychiatrists, or whatever category we're talking about. And then what you do is, I've in the past done a search for people on Google and looked in Yelp and looked at reviews of them. Now, in Google reviews. Now, you got to take these with a grain of salt, because remember that people have different people.
Whoops.
We'll glue it back on. People have sometimes people can have agendas when they do reviews. So what you want to look at is not just take one review, take a lot of different reviews and look at them and from different places, okay? So just to get a sense, but also sometimes don't pay any attention to those. Lawrence's therapist that he really likes and we really liked, there weren't a lot of reviews, and a couple of them, looking back, I was pretty sure at the time it sounded like the people had some kind of agenda, so I ignored them.
And I mean, there are people that are like giving them bad reviews just because they actually like challenged their opinions. Like, it
could be anything.
Like maybe the person, the patient is like really egotistical, and the therapist is like trying to confront them about that, being like, "Hey man, chill."
They could have,
and they'll be like, "I'm gonna leave a bad review on Yelp."
Yeah, I mean, they could have a severe personality disorder. The therapist, they could maybe not be paying their bill, and their therapist, said to them, "Listen, I've given you some chances, and this ain't a charity." Well, yeah, and there's also a reason that we'll go into with a therapist video that we do. There's a reason why therapists insist on you paying the bill. But anyway, so you get the list. You look at some reviews, and also sometimes there are online groups. Like we live near Berkeley, and there's a Berkeley Parents Group that does a lot of reviews of therapists and doctors. So look, there might be like Angie's List and
Find therapists on Craigslist.
The neighborhood one that I can't remember. Drawing a blank.
The word neighbor is in the name, I think.
Yeah, anyway, there are a lot of different communities that have reviews. So also see if you can look at some of those. And what you also want to do, honey, you're going to knock over the tripod. Oh, no. What you also want to do is you want to call them ahead of time and make sure they take your insurance, because this is one experience we had with a lot of therapists, and especially therapists, but also doctors, where they show on the list as being in network that they took their insurance, but you'd get there and you'd find out, oh no, we no longer take that. So call them and make sure that they take your insurance, okay? And this is something you can do yourself, okay? It doesn't matter that you're a kid. You're going to be talking to a receptionist, so you can do your due diligence.
Yeah. In the case that you don't pay the blood-sucking mega corporations, also known as insurance companies, what do you do, Mom?
I wasn't sure where you were going with that. I'm going to talk about that. Let me just say one other thing. Is that there's an article that I wrote for my website Wing of Madness a while ago about what happens when your claim gets rejected by the insurance company, that I am going to turn it into a PDF and put in the description. Anyway, so if you do not have insurance, you do what I did when I was first diagnosed with depression. You find a local clinic that operates on a sliding scale. So, for instance, when I was first diagnosed with depression, my insurance company refused to pay for 18 months, because they said it was a pre-existing condition, because a year before my doctor had made a note that I seemed stressed out. So then they said it was
stupid.
Yeah, I know. Well, it actually was a pre-existing condition. I had it for years and years. But it was ridiculous.
Just diagnosed.
Right. I'd never been diagnosed. So I was making like $14,000 a year, and I had very little money for that stuff. So so what happens is I talked to my doctor, said, who do you think I should see? He referred me to the mental health clinic that was attached to the local hospital. So I went there. They operate on a sliding scale. I got diagnosed by the head of the clinic. Then what they did is they assigned me a psychiatrist for my medication and a therapist. So I paid $30 per visit. That was based on my salary and my expenses like rent and stuff like that. So that's what you do. And there are clinics everywhere. There are community clinics, that are freestanding. There are clinics that are attached to hospitals. Now, granted, if you are in a really rural area, you might have to go a ways away to go to a clinic. But, you're going to have to do the research and find out and talk to your pediatrician, your family doctor, and if they're not the one you're seeing, of course, if you don't. Anyway, and just get recommendations also. Sometimes it's hard to get a recommendation for a psychiatrist because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. So it's a little harder than some other things. But you can actually also ask your doctor, if they don't know anyone, do they know any doctors who may know someone? Call that doctor, ask their opinion. Call pediatricians in town, in your, just use the phone, use the internet, just see what you can find. And you should be able to find a clinic that is affordable. So what happens in your first session when you're being diagnosed for anxiety or depression? Now, your first session with a psychiatrist should be at least 45 minutes, because what the psychiatrist has to do is take a complete medical history. They have to ask you a lot of questions to determine the severity of your condition, when it started. I mean, there's a lot of things that they need to know to figure out what the treatment plan is going to be. So answer the questions honestly and to the best of your ability, because that's the only way. This is someone who doesn't, in most cases, does not know you, and is going to have to, start from scratch if they don't know you. If this is your family doctor, also, then this may be someone who doesn't know a lot about psychiatry, so you may have to do some of your homework. But if it's someone that you like and you're comfortable with and that you feel is going to educate themselves as needed, that is probably the best person for you. So they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They should talk to you as much as they talk to your parents. Now, they need to talk to your parents because someone with any kind of mental illness, and this includes us, is not necessarily the most objective person, okay? No. I mean, the thing is, it's sometimes very hard for you to see, for instance, if you're depressed when you're getting better. Someone else may notice it before you do. It's very possible. And until you know yourself really well, like, I know I'm getting better when, I knew you'd knock into it.
I did that purposely.
Move your foot.
I did that purposely.
When you, I know when I'm getting better when I'm depressed, when I start singing and listening to music, okay? That's something that took me years to notice, okay? So... Wake me up inside, Kelly. So it's if you're a kid or a teen, you may not really be familiar with yourself and your condition yet. So it's reasonable for them to talk to your parents or your guardian, but they should talk to you as much, if not more, than they talk to your family. The other important thing is for you to ask the doctor questions. I am going to include also as a PDF that you can print out or have on your phone and bring a list of questions for you to ask the doctor, because it's sometimes good to bring with you, even if you were diagnosed a while ago, because sometimes when you're sitting there, then it's hard to remember all the questions. So it's something just to keep with you in case you start seeing someone new. It's also good in case the doctor you've been seeing is switching your medication, because then you're going to have to ask the same questions again. The most important thing is, if you don't feel that you are heard at the end of this appointment, and you tried to make yourself heard, this doctor is not for you. If you have other choices, find another doctor. That's the other thing, is to have your parents, or you ask your insurance company, if you have insurance, can I see multiple doctors to see who is best for me? Okay, and sometimes they don't like that, and sometimes they're okay with that. They generally, a lot of insurance companies will okay that for therapy, but they may not be used to hearing that question if you're talking about seeing someone for medication. But this is really, really important, okay? This person, first of all, should not dismiss you if you feel that your situation is dire, okay? So if you feel your situation is dire and the doctor says, I don't think we really need to do medication at this point, then you say, wait a minute, okay?
Hold up, boyo.
It's not that I understand you're the doctor, and I respect your opinion and your experience and everything. However, I don't think you've really heard me. I don't think you understand that I am really feeling desperate right now. Okay, if that's the way you're feeling, then you need to convey that, because sometimes they've been asking you questions, you've been answering, and maybe you didn't have a chance to say, I'm scared, I feel horrible. This is, what they look at as a measure is they look at how much of an impact is this having on your life. And sometimes I know I've been at fault in the past where I haven't emphasized enough how bad things are, either for me or for Lawrence. So you don't want to walk out of there feeling despair because you don't feel that the solution that the treatment they're proposing is sufficient. That you need to make sure that you've conveyed that, but also that they've heard you. If they haven't heard you and you have conveyed that, if you have an option, then definitely find someone else. And I actually have a story about that. So at this clinic that I first went to when I was first diagnosed, I saw the same therapist, but the doctors were on a 6-month rotating basis. So someone would be there for 6 months, and then they would they would leave and someone else would come.
Stupid.
Well, there are a lot of different reasons for it. But anyway, so the first person I saw was fine. I liked them, got along with them. They listened to me. I actually refuse to start on medication for the first 6 months, which I'll probably talk about in a future video. And I just had therapy. But anyway, once I was taking medication, the first person was fine. The second person, that's rubbing alcohol. So, the second person who came in, however, was horrible. He was absolutely horrible. I told him that my medication didn't seem to be working, and he had one question, which was completely irrelevant to me. His one question was, "Do you have thoughts of harming yourself or someone else?" And I was like, "Well, no, but I never have. I never had suicidal thoughts,
or
thank God.
homicidal.
I never had homicidal thoughts. I never self-harmed. So it was completely irrelevant. It wasn't a test or marker or litmus. It wasn't a litmus test for how I was doing at all. So I couldn't stand him. And so luckily, 6 months later, thank God, this new guy started, who I adored. There was a huge difference. I walked into the room, and I noticed right away, unlike the guy before him had put nothing personal. It was like he was just waiting to get out of there. I mean, he couldn't wait to get out of there. This guy, the new guy, he had plants in there. He had pictures of himself with a kid. I mean, which reflected the fact that he was a very nurturing person. He listened to you. He respected my opinion, and he changed my medicine, and it made a big difference. So don't put up with the doctors who don't listen to you, especially don't listen to you because you're a kid or a teen. Okay? That's ridiculous. Okay? You are their patient.
You have freedom.
Your opinion is important. You are the patient. You're the one that they are, you are in their charge. Anyway, so end of rant. So I hope this video has been helpful. And what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to empower you. Okay, with this video and the ones we're going to do about the therapist and everything, we want to empower you as because a lot of people don't take you seriously at your age. If you're not an adult, a full-grown adult, then a lot of people aren't taking you seriously. And also because you are, you have less power at this age. So it's really important for you to know how to do these things yourself. How to, what are the steps in finding a doctor? What are the steps in making sure, your insurance is going to pay? I mean, things like that. It's important for you to know this stuff. Even if your parents are great, wonderful, supportive people, it still doesn't hurt for you to know what's going on and for you to know what the processes are. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to empower you and give you the information that you need. We hope this has been helpful. And if it has been helpful, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, because we're going to be doing, obviously, more videos for kids and teens on everything to do with depression and anxiety. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. We'd love to hear from you. And then we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.